Hey guys, AJ here, and in this video we're going to analyze Ayaka's constellations and find out exactly how much more performance you're getting for each constellation. The impact of some constellations depends a bit on your playstyle, so I'm going to distinguish between sustained on-field DPS and quickswap DPS. Calculations are based on the same assumptions as in my Ayaka weapon ranking that I showed in a previous video. Link to the original spreadsheet is in the description. And with that, let's get right into it. Let's begin with her C1, which gives you a 50% chance to reduce the cooldown of your elemental skill by 0.3 seconds whenever your normal or charged attacks hit an enemy, with an ICD of 0.1 seconds. Now on paper, this constellation sounds like a neat quality of life improvement. Reducing the cooldown of your elemental skill means you're generating energy particles at a higher rate, and you're getting better uptime on your first passive's buff to normal and charged attacks. Whether you do get the cooldown reduction when you hit an enemy is a bit RNG dependent, but if you optimize your basic attack string around this constellation, which would be repeating 4 normal attacks into 1 charge attack because that gives you the most chances to proc this constellation, it is theoretically possible to reduce the cooldown of your skill by up to 4 seconds or even a bit more if you're lucky. In practice, however, the benefits are barely noticeable. In any form of quickswap scenario where you spend no more than 6 to 7 seconds on Ayaka after her burst, which is the time window in which she gets the bulk of her damage out, this constellation is close to non-existent. You'll maybe get an extra cast of your skill every 3rd or 4th rotation. The only scenario in which you might want this constellation is if you're playing her with Xingqiu, for example, and you're really trying to get the most out of every Xingqiu ultimate, meaning you keep Ayaka on the field for much longer. Even then, it's not quite enough to consistently reduce the cooldown to 6.6 seconds or lower, which would allow you to get 3 casts every 20 seconds instead of just 2, because in reality you're only getting it down to around 8 seconds because of the RNG involved. With that, the uptime on your A1 passive would go from 60% at C0 to around 80% at C1, and your particle generation would go up from 27 cryoparticles per minute at C0 to 31.5 particles at C1. In terms of damage increase, you're still dealing around 4% more damage than before, but compared to her following constellations, it's nothing special. On to her C2, which gives you 2 additional mini storms on your ultimate that each deal 20% of the original storm's damage. On paper, that's a straight 40% increase on the damage of your ultimate, but for that the mini storms would have to stick to their target. With bigger enemies that is usually not a problem, so in the Abyss for example, it's relatively easy to pull this off with some good timing and positioning, and simply restarting the run if it goes wrong. Sometimes you're simply going to miss. Either the big storm itself or only one of the smaller ones sticks, and so on. So I'm not saying you're getting the full value of this constellation every time you press Q, but we want to find out how much value you can get out of Ayaka's constellations, so for this time I'm going to go with the best outcome and assume that both storms stick. In that case, this is a 40% increase in burst damage, and over 1 full rotation, this amounts to a 23% damage increase compared to C0 on sustained Ayaka and 26% on quickswap. Her C3 gives 3 levels on your burst, which means that all 3 storms now deal 18% more damage than before. Since her burst constitutes upwards of 50% of her total damage output, this is another amazing constellation that boosts your damage over 1 full rotation by another 10% on sustained and 13% on quickswap. Her C4 reduces the defense of enemies hit by your ultimate by 30% for 6 seconds. This debuff refreshes as long as enemies keep getting hit by your storms, so under optimal conditions you can maintain this debuff for up to 11 seconds. Defense is factored into the multiplier that accounts for character and enemy level. If no defense reduction is involved, that multiplier looks like this, and with defense reduction applied, it becomes this. To make it short, against a level 90 enemy whose defense has been reduced by 30%, you're dealing 17.6% more damage than before. Against a level 100 enemy, it's even a bit more, around 18.2%. That is a huge damage increase, and most importantly, it's not only Ayaka but your entire team that deals this much more damage to the debuffed enemy. So in terms of raw damage increase, this is easily her most impactful constellation. C5 raises the talent level of your elemental skill by 3, which is again an 18% damage increase on your E, and over 1 full rotation that boosts your total damage output by a mere 2% over C4. This one is by far her most insignificant constellation. And the last one, C6. Once every 10 seconds, your next charge attack is empowered and deals 298% bonus damage. This damage bonus is additive to all other damage percent bonuses you're already getting from your goblet, passives, and other sources. If you have this constellation, it's probably worth it coming back to Ayaka once every 10 seconds, no matter which playstyle you choose, because it's a lot of extra damage. And assuming 2 of these empowered charge attacks every 20 seconds, you're dealing another 7% more damage on sustained Ayaka and 14% more damage on quickswap Ayaka. Now that we have all the numbers, you can see that C6 Ayaka deals between 76 and 96% more damage than C0. I think that's pretty strong, but that's partly because my only other reference are calculations I previously made on Keqing, whose damage only grows by 38% on sustained and 47% on quickswap with all 6 constellations. Basically, Ayaka's constellations are twice as strong as Keqing's, and she even boosts the damage of her team members by reducing enemy defense, whereas Keqing grants you particles. Now, how many constellations should you get, if at all? I would say ignore her constellations altogether if you're a low spender or free to play, because you'd at least want to get to her C2, which is arguably the biggest spike to her personal damage. That said, her C2, 3, and 4 are all pretty good, and if you're going for more than C2, I'd say don't stop until C4, which is arguably her overall best constellation. Now, you could say that you're already that close to C6, so go for it, but personally I wouldn't bother with anything above C4. C5 is a scam, and I don't think the rather mediocre boost that C6 provides is worth the primos. But in the end, that's just my personal opinion. Anyway, that is already it for this video. Let me know what you think about her constellations and if you think they're worth it. Personally, I don't feel the need for any of her constellations. She's plenty strong as is, and Leiden-sama is waiting, so yeah. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.